All right, it's me, Mike, with HPDS. I'm going to go ahead and do a Genesis 20 study. So let me grab my little books here. Genesis 20. So before I get started, I'll go ahead and do I'll say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who is in heaven, hallowed be thy name. May your kingdom come and may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Please give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our debt, as we forgive those in debt to us. And Lord, lead us not into temptation, but instead deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom of power and glory, Lord, forever and ever. Amen. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right into Genesis 20. Genesis 20, if we remember from Genesis 19, basically Sodom and Gomorrah has just been destroyed. In chapters 19 and 20, we saw some chapters 19, we saw some angels, we saw some perversion, we saw some destruction, and some other stuff going on in chapter 19. So now, like I said, I'll jump into chapter 20, and we'll see what happens after that whole incident. So here we are. I'm going to change it to the King James Version. And it reads, And Abraham journeyed from thence toward the south country, and dwelled between Kadesh and Shur, and sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, She is my sister. And Abimelech king of Gerar sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night, and said to him, Behold, thou art a dead man, for the woman which thou hast taken, for she is a man's wife. But Abimelech cannot come near her. And he said, Lord, wilt thou slay also a righteous nation? Said he not unto me, She is my sister? And even she herself said, He is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocency of my hands have I done this. And God said unto him in a dream, Yeah, I know that thou didst this in the integrity of thy heart, for I also withheld thee from sinning against me. Therefore suffered I thee not to touch her. Now therefore restore the man his wife, for he is a prophet, and he shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live. And if thou restore her not, know thou that thou shalt surely die, thou and all that are thine. Therefore Abimelech rose early in the morning, and called all his servants, and told all these things in their ears. And the men were sore afraid. And Abimelech called Abraham, and said unto him, What hast thou done unto us? And what have I offended thee, that thou hast brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? Thou hast done deeds unto me that ought not to be done. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, What sawest thou that thou hast done this thing? And Abraham said, Because I thought, surely the fear of God is not in this place. They will slay me for my wife's sake. And yet, indeed, she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. And she became my wife. And it came to pass, when God caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said unto her, This is thy kindness which thou shalt show unto me. At every place whither she shall come, say of me, He is my brother. And Abimelech took sheep and oxen and men servants and women servants, and gave them unto Abraham, and restored him Sarah his wife. And Abimelech said, Behold, my land is before thee, dwell where it pleaseth thee. And unto Sarah he said, Behold, I have given thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, he is to thee a covering of the eyes, unto all that are with thee, and with all other. Thus she was reproved. So Abraham prayed unto God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bare children. For the Lord had fast closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech, because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Okay, so that is chapter 20. I'll go ahead and return to me, and I'll take a look at what's going on here. We'll get into this. So chapter 20, we see Abraham again with Sarah calling each other brother and sister. And unlike the Egyptians, well, very much like the Egyptians, I guess you could say, first like the Egyptians, there's a lot of money transferred from one king over here to Abraham because of the beautiful wife, and Sarah is taken. Mind you, she's 99 years old about this time, right around 100 years old. And again, they don't realize, they think they're old. Sarah and Abraham were already calling themselves old when God was talking to them, but here they are still apparently at 100 years old. She's still, uh, an eye catcher. Apparently, the kings are seeing her and they're still taking her, trying to make her their wife. So you could see that. Even at 100 years old, apparently they didn't look very old. I imagine they probably looked young and beautiful still, even though they felt and thought that they were old. So they didn't even know what old was. Um, you know what I'm saying? So even though they were old for our times, they were still in those younger kind of bodies that were able to get old, just like Shem and Noah and all of them people. Even Adam and Eve lived to be quite old. Um, so now let me go ahead and, like I said, let me just read a few things of what we're looking for here in chapter 20. We're going to see Abraham at Gerar. We're going to see that Abimelech is reproved by God for taking Sarah. We're going to see Abimelech restoring Sarah. So that's the outline of this particular. Let me get some pictures up so I can show where exactly the situation where they were at. Let's see. Let me see if this place shows us Kadesh, Wilderness, the Negev. I think this is about where they were at. Let me see. I'm still looking. Kadesh and Shur. Yeah, that'll probably work. Let's see. One last. I don't see Shur on this map anywhere. I see Kadesh, but I don't really see Shur on any of these maps. Maybe this one does it. Well, I'll keep these two up, and I will show you my screen again. Make sure I got that right. Okay, so basically we've got Abraham journeyed from thence toward the south country. And so he goes from where he was just at when he saw the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. So he saw Sodom and Gomorrah right here, area of Sodom and Gomorrah. This is a different map. This shows the Negev, Beer, Gerar. Here it shows Gerar. That's where he was hanging out right there. And if we see this other map that we've been looking at, we see here's the wilderness of Shur. So I guess I did see Shur. And here's Kadesh. So he's in between. Let's see. That's what it says. It says, dwelled between Kadesh and Shur and sojourned in Gerar. So he's in this Gerar, and that's when he comes across. And Abraham said of his wife, she's my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent. And he took Sarah. So it was pretty obvious that in these times and ages, kings just came and took women for part of their harem, or as wives. They found a woman and they just took her. That's how powerful these people were being, or acting at least. They were definitely acting that powerful. Not that they really were. But here we see Gerar, and you can kind of see it. Here's Hebron. It's kind of, he goes southwest just about. This one kind of has them equal, but you could see Gerar looks just about to be in the middle of this Dead Sea, just below middle, just right around where this thing is. So let's see if we can't find that kind of, see right here. So it would have them kind of right here somewhere. Right around here in this wilderness, right in between. So these maps, they might be a little off, it looks like, but they're about the same. He was basically going from here to there. And you can see that where my mouse is pointing. And that's where he was spending time, in this place of Gerar, wherever this city or this area was. That's where he was sojourning. He was spending time there when Abimelech comes up to him, finds out a little bit about him apparently, and then just takes Sarah. Like whether it was by force or not, it probably was by force though. It was probably something that, I would imagine, Abimelech shows up with his entourage of people, and Abraham's got his probably entourage of people, but Abimelech comes in and proves, says, I'm the king of this area, and, you're here on my territory. And Abraham, being the good guy that he is, probably didn't want to start anything, so he says, "Oh yeah, I'm here visiting. God has sent me over here, and so forth." And then Abimelech would have probably immediately seen Sarah standing right next to him and says, "Oh, look at this beautiful woman. Who's she?" And Abraham would have said, "Oh, she's my sister." Just, just like he's been doing. He did in Egypt. Apparently, he's now doing it because he's realizing that these so-called kings will just snatch a woman up like no problem, and they might just kill you if you don't let them go willingly. So of course here they are. He's probably just let him go. Probably just let her go willingly, and she probably went willingly. And mind you, she's what, pregnant at this time? She's still kind of pregnant, or at least from the last chapter, she's about to be pregnant. She's gonna get pregnant. And so this is that time in between God saw them, between the last time, right when God went up and destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. And God said, this time next year, I'm going to come back. And Abraham's wife, Sarah, she's going to have a baby. She's going to, so this is in that time frame when she's about to get pregnant, or she's, early on in her pregnancy. And once again, she's about 100 years old. And here's a king thinking she's beautiful and taking off with her. But of course, God comes to the rescue right away. I mean, obviously, she's a pregnant woman. And so that's why this dream comes to Abimelech, where it may not have come so quickly or so urgently to the Pharaoh. And they would have just seen the curses happening. But here it comes on pretty strong and heavy. And God comes to him and tells him, "You are a dead man because of that woman that you took. She's already somebody's wife." So this is also God kind of showing this guy Abimelech, which he's over here calling himself a king too, just like Sodom, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. And we learn that even though they're calling themselves king, they may not necessarily be that great of king. The only king that we should know that is worthwhile was Melchizedek, who's the king of righteousness and the king of peace. And he's the only one that, Abraham paid tithes to. So that's the only king worth mentioning. That was Abraham's king. He was basically the king of God, and he recognized that. But these other guys, I mean, look at these guys. He's just taking women. And so God reproves him. God comes to him and says, "Look," and he kind of gets in. I would imagine this was like a learning experience for Abimelech. Like, God comes up to him and says, "Look, man, you cannot just take women. You can't just do it. You can't just come across people and take the women. It's not right what you're doing." And Abimelech hadn't come near, and he said, "Oh, well, because he's telling him, are you going to also kill my nation too? Because if you kill me, my people might die. I'm the king of this nation, and they haven't done anything. They're righteous. They didn't do anything. And didn't she tell me that they were brother and sister? She's my sister, and even she said he's my brother. So I didn't, that's where not Abraham, but Abimelech here is clearly pleading. He's pleading with God in his dream. He's a dream. God didn't come to him physically. He didn't come to him. He came to him in a dream. So just not like he's done with Abraham in the past, where he physically showed up. In this case, he showed up in a dream. So just like when Abraham was asleep and it was a dark horror that came upon him, chances are that's what's going on here, is a dark horror that has come upon Abimelech. And he's clearly afraid, and he's scared, and he's pleading for his life. And he says, she told me there was a brother, and he told me that was his sister. I didn't do anything wrong. I haven't even been with her. And that's why God tells him, "Yeah, I know this, and I know that you did this in integrity because I was withholding you from sinning against me." So God is proving himself to a king over here. Now he's talking to one of these kings, Abimelech, and he's outright telling him, and he's establishing his dominance and his authority. This is what God is doing. He's establishing his authority over here. Hold on, I have some sort of a message, but it's nothing important. So yeah, he says that's what he tells him. He's establishing his authority. God is telling him, "I know, I'm telling you, I'm establishing my authority. I was the one that made sure that you didn't sin against me. I was the one that made sure you didn't touch her. I was the one that's what that is saving your life and keeping you from death right now." That is what God is telling Abimelech. And Abimelech obviously is, this is something that's very special and important. It was something that was very scary to him, I imagine. Something that he right away has to wake up and tell his servants about. But God continues on the last part of this dream. He says, God is telling him, now therefore restore the man his wife, because he's a prophet, and he will pray for you and you will live. And if you don't restore her, then you know that you will die. And you and everybody, your whole kingdom will die. So Abimelech, the dream basically is God comes to him and says, you're gonna die because you took this wife, this man's wife. And Abimelech is saying, well, if you kill me, my whole nation is gonna die. I'm the king of these people. Will you also slay a righteous nation with them? I mean, you might as well kill them too, is what he's saying. If you kill me, you might as well kill my nation. So you could see how these kings are acting. He's really falling behind his people, and he's standing behind the people instead of standing in front of the people, which is kind of the same thing if you think about what happened to the other kings of Sodom and Gomorrah and so forth. They got destroyed, they got attacked, and the kings, they fled, they went up into the mountains, and then they come back after the fact, after Abraham saves everybody. They come out to meet him and say, oh, thank you, let's make you rich. And that's what they were kind of saying. And here's Abimelech kind of doing the same thing. Like, if you kill me, you might as well kill my whole people. And he's kind of saying, if you think about it, he's sort of threatening God in the little bit that he can, saying, like, I got an entire kingdom, I got all these nations, I got an army behind me. Even though he's afraid here in this dream, he's saying, are you gonna kill my whole army to kill me? Will you also kill a whole nation to kill me? That's what he's saying. I've got a whole army. Are you going to come kill my whole army and my people and me? But God's telling him, no, I'm not. I'm the one keeping you. I'm preventing this from happening because I know you and I'm God and so forth. And that's why he tells them at the end, go ahead and restore this man his wife, because if not, guess what? I will kill your whole nation. I will destroy you and everybody that is with you, all your people. So that's how serious this is. Now go give him his wife back. And so that's why Abimelech rises early in the morning, and clearly whatever this dream was terrifying to him. And he tells all the people, his servants, like, oh man, I had a dream, and God came and said that this is a wife, Sarah belongs to Abraham. They're married, and he's going to kill me if I don't restore her. And more than that, he's going to kill everybody. He's going to kill all you guys too. So it's not just about me, is what he's telling his servants. You guys don't touch her. Don't worry. Don't do anything bad to them. In fact, he gives them a bunch of things. So his servants are going to need a little bit of convincing, especially to give all their stuff away. They're going to pay a pretty heavy price for what Abimelech did as their king. And then Abimelech called Abraham, and Abimelech is confronting Abraham about the situation. He said, what did I do to you that you would have done this to me? So he's really concerned, and he says, you brought God upon me. Look at you, brought a great sin upon me. You've done bad things to me. Abimelech is telling Abraham, he's telling him, you have almost gotten my kingdom killed and destroyed because of you. And that's why, what did you see that you did this? Why, what's wrong with me and my people that you came and you lied to me and you did this and you brought the vengeance of God upon us? So Abimelech is really terrified. You can see that Abimelech is terrified, but he's also as noble as the humans were at the time. It seems like this is about as noble as they were. They were running around snatching up women, calling themselves kings. But, that's just what they were. That's the kind of people they were. But at least he comes back, and after he says, oh, okay, I snatched up this woman, and I guess I didn't really pay attention. I didn't really notice I didn't know that maybe I've been snatching up wives this whole time. I could have been snatching up people's wives and not know about it, and thank God for finally showing me this thing. But what did you see that made this happen? Why did you do this to me? And Abraham told them, because surely I thought surely, because there's nobody here that even fears God. You guys don't even know who God is. He's telling them, I thought that nobody here even knows who God is, and that if you knew that I was married, that you would come and kill me and just take her anyway. Then suddenly she would be a widow, and you would have the right to be with her, because then she'd be a widow, and it'd be okay for you to suddenly be with her. But he goes, I didn't lie to you. She is my sister. And so this is what we're told. This is something that we didn't necessarily see in chapter 12 when the same thing was going on in Egypt. It was the same kind of deal where Abraham and Sarah go into Egypt, and obviously they know what's going on, that women are just being snatched up by the Pharaoh. So they start going and telling people, she's my sister, but they don't necessarily explain, like they do explain here, that she is his sister, that they're half siblings, that they have the same father, but they don't have the same mother, and that's what and that's even so he says, I wasn't lying, she's my sister, but she became my wife, and she became my wife. So the only thing is, I just didn't tell you that she was my wife. I told you she was my sister, but you should be, and that's why they're kind of coming to the understanding between each other, that hey, you kings run around and y'all just steal women, and you have no idea what you're doing. You're bringing curses upon yourself whenever you have a wife, and you just snatching up wives probably, or killing the husbands without asking any questions. You guys are doing that kind of stuff. That's what Abraham is telling him. And that's why he even makes mention. And it came to pass, when God caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said unto her, this is thy kindness which thou shalt show unto me. At every place whither we shall come, say of me, he is my brother. So he's saying, look, when I left my homeland, all you kings out here apparently on the way to Egypt are just stealing wives. You're just taking women, snatching up women. It does not matter. And you're killing men that are with women to just keep the women. So you yourselves know that's why I did this. That's why they're coming to that understanding of how each other, they're like they're talking about, they're, how do I say it? They're becoming close and familiar. They're understanding each other. Things that it's we're recognizing the fact that in this world people do things, and sometimes they do things and they don't ever really realize that what they're doing is bad, until somebody tells them, hey, you're doing something bad too. So Abraham, Abimelech was the one, very high and mighty, being a king over here, acting high and mighty, takes the woman, and then when God gets upset with him, what's the saying? It rolls downhill or whatever. And it was the same thing with Abimelech. He comes back and he gets mad at Abraham. He says, what do you do? This is your fault, Abraham. Why are you doing this? And then Abraham comes at him and said, hey, it's not my fault either. I'm not telling you a lie. You're the one that, didn't get all the information that you needed. You should have known. You should have asked. You should have been, hey, are you married? Instead of just, hey, give me this woman. So they're really coming to an understanding as two different groups of people here under God. So this is really like it is. Like I said, Abraham already is a king, even though they haven't called him a king. God is basically calling him a king. God is saying, you're going to have kings come out of you. You might as well be a king. You are a king. You don't even reckon. He's not acting like a king, or he's not thinking of himself as a king, but he is acting like a king. He's not thinking of himself as a king. That's what I mean to say. Abimelech, on the other hand, is calling himself, is thinking he's a king, but he's not necessarily acting like a king. And so we have these two different nations coming under the understanding given to them by God, that hey, maybe you should not be running around calling her your sister when she's actually your wife. And hey, Abimelech, maybe you shouldn't just be running around snatching up women without knowing their circumstances. So that's what's kind of going on here, is these two nations are butting heads like that, and they're coming to this agreement and coming to this understanding. And that's why Abimelech says, after everything's said and done, he clearly decides that, what? He gives him sheep and oxen and men servants and women servants, and he gave them to Abraham. And he restored Sarah, his wife. So basically he's saying, look, Abimelech is saying, you know what? You're probably right here. You're in the right. You're right. She's your wife. She's also your sister. And I'm the one that just took her without understanding the consequences of taking women. So he's the one that, you know what? Here you go. And he even tells them, go, behold, my land is before thee. dwell where it pleaseth you. So he's telling him, you know what, we're friends now. Go ahead and this is my land. I'm not gonna harm you. Go, go live in it where where you find pleasing. There's plenty of room here for your people. Go live there, and and that's what he's saying. And he said unto Sarah, but he tells Sarah before he leaves, I have given thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, he is to thee a covering of the eyes unto all that are with thee, and with all other. So he's basically saying, your husband here, he's a good guy. I gave him, I gave your brother 1,000 pieces of silver here, and he's a covering of the eyes unto all that are with you. And so he's telling her though, but this man protects you. This is the man that protects you. This is your husband. Don't also don't try to come under the protection of other men, which seems to be what Abraham was kind of doing here. He was kind of uh, he was protecting himself from other men, and this king is kind of giving them a little, giving them some giving them, how do I say this? He's giving them some advice, saying, you know what, don't be afraid of us kings. You go ahead and tell each other that, tell people you guys are married. He's kind of trying to tell them, don't, because what you guys are doing, you're gonna get people killed out here. You're gonna get, people are gonna come to war. But he says, she's a covering, like this man, he's a scary dude. He's an intimidating man, is what Abimelech is saying about Abraham. He goes, he's a covering of the eyes for all the people that are with you. So basically, Sarah's people, her little Sarah, her servants, and even though it all belongs to Abraham with them, and they're one person, they're kind of acting like two little camps here. You got a camp of women probably and a camp of men, and that's probably what's kind of going on here. But I'm just saying that, of course, I'm not necessarily sure if that's true, but this is how I'm reading it. This is how it's sounding. That basically Abimelech is telling him, don't be concerned. Like, you guys, Abraham is strong. Abraham is intimidating. I'm not going to war with Abraham. I'm not, it would be too costly. It might be, and based off of my information, Abimelech is saying, based off of my information, I would just die and my whole nation would come to ruin if I ever went to war with Abraham, because you guys have God with your side. And so that's why it says, thus she was reproved, talking about Sarah. Thus she was reproved that, who knows, perhaps Sarah and Abraham weren't necessarily physically together. Like in the same area. Maybe, like I said, they could have had two different camps, two different kind of households, where Abraham was doing something out there with the men or doing some work, and Sarah was back home on the encampment, and that's when Abimelech may have showed up and said, oh, blah blah blah, and Sarah, being the kind of what their little arrangement had been, Abraham wasn't there maybe, and so she would have said, oh, that's my brother. And Abimelech could have been like, oh, well, your brother's out in the fields. Come with me for right now, and I'll show you, who I am and who my people are, and maybe you'll like me. And so that's why it could have been that was the case, that, they weren't physically in the same area when Abimelech came and took Sarah. And so Sarah was keeping up the lie here, or keeping up the appearances that they're just brother and sister. But that's why Abimelech is over here reproving her, basically, he's giving her some advice, kind of like some stern advice. Like, look, I gave your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Look, that's what you were basically coming after. You guys were coming for, when you were here and you told me this lie, it was so that you would protect yourself. And you don't think that maybe your husband is strong enough to take on other people. And maybe Abraham himself doesn't necessarily think of himself as too strong, because, like I said, he's not running around calling himself a king, but God is calling him a king, and that he's going to be the father of nations. That's the same kind of concept. So that's why, Abimelech, as a king already, who's running around with the confidence enough to call himself a king, he was the one giving them a little bit more confidence, saying, hey, just go ahead and be with your husband. He's a covering. Your husband protects you more than I can protect you. And he could protect all your people, and go ahead and just tell people, if you mess with me, Abraham's going to come after you. And that's all you need. And so that's why Abraham prayed to God. So obviously Abraham, just like God said he would, Abraham prayed unto God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bare children. So you can see Abimelech already had a wife too. So he had a main wife, and clearly he had some servants and probably a harem as well. And somehow they weren't having children during this time, and now they can start having children as well. So for the Lord had fast closed up the wombs on the house of Abimelech, so he did it fast. So something probably happened, like within the short time that Sarah was with them, that suddenly, who knows? They probably, even the pregnant women might have lost some children, and suddenly they're just, for maybe however long it was, maybe a few weeks, maybe a few months, uh, whatever happened, these women just couldn't have children in that few times. They couldn't get pregnant, or maybe even some of the pregnant women lost their children. And so this is something that suddenly Abimelech, obviously, he understands, and he comes to the understanding that, oh, wow, this was the guy that, was cursing me over here. God was cursing me on behalf of this man, and that's why we were having problems, and so forth. But that is Genesis 20. Genesis 20 is after Sodom and Gomorrah. Like I said, a quick recap. After Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed, Abraham gets out of the country, apparently, or he leaves towards the south, and he goes to Gerar, this place, Gerar, where he comes across yet another king. And Gerar, we see, is right around there in this area. So there's another king of this area. There's more stuff going. There's more. Abraham and Sarah are still lying about themselves. They don't have the confidence of what it is to be a king and queen, because they're, and they're still young, they're still beautiful, they're still powerful, they're still wealthy. And Abraham at 100 years old is still an intimidating man to these people. Him and his household, they're all very intimidating. There's this king Abimelech didn't want to go to war at all. He didn't, and he was convinced that if he did, Abraham through God, or God through Abraham, would completely destroy his entire nation. He was convinced of it. And that's why he basically paid them some money instead of the other way around. It was ultimately Abimelech found himself to be in the wrong, and just was, here you go, as a king, here's some money, get it, and be in my land. But he kind of recognizes them as a blessing as well. That's why he tells them, go ahead and stay in my land, do whatever you want. But also keep in mind, he wasn't, he's not really a king necessarily like God really is. Like, God is a true king. Abimelech is running around calling himself a king, but he's only doing it on God's authority. God is allowing him to do it. And that's what God himself was showing earlier in the dream. He was saying, you calling yourself a king? I am God. And this man is a prophet, and he's my prophet, and you yourself will be destroyed by me unless you give her back. So that's where, like, one king telling another king, look, you're going to pay me homage now, or else I'm going to destroy all your nation. And so that's why Abimelech was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm a king for God now. Now he's just a puppet god. He's just a banana republic, as some people might call it. He's a banana republic for God now. He's like, I'm a king, but I'm only a little puppet on strings for this God, because he's the real guy. He'll destroy everything. So that's really why he gives Abraham access to the land, because technically Abimelech, just like any other human being, they don't own the land. God owns the land. God is in control of all these situations and where people go and so forth. We already see him, like I said, we've seen him playing. He did one in the Tower of Babel. He scattered the people. He split their tongues, their languages, so they were, talking multiple languages. And that's what he does. And he was the one that overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. Remember, that's what it is to overthrow a king, is utter destruction upon that king's nation. That's what God was showing these people of Sodom and Gomorrah, who had their own kings apparently. And so now Abimelech would have probably, oh well, I came across the real God here, the real true king, and he found out, oh, and Abraham is his prophet, so I better be good and kind to them. And that's what's going on here. And they're coming to agreements. They were butting heads, but now they're coming to more understanding. And these are two nations It's early. You could see what's going on. This is kind of like what's the word? Diplomacy. This is diplomacy in their age, and this is a um, diplomatic chapter about diplomacy, Genesis 20, whereas Genesis 19 was of war. Like God was overthrowing these people that would not be diplomatic, that could not be diplomatic. They weren't diplomatic. Um, and they were always they were just basically wicked. And here's a man, Abimelech, as another king that is willing to be diplomatic with them. So that's what's going on, and that's Genesis 20. And like I said, I'll go ahead and end it right here. And Genesis 20 was also pretty kind of a short chapter at only 18 verses. So it's got a lot in it, just like all the other chapters. Everything else is I could probably keep going on, and I'm sure I could connect this chapter to other chapters and speak more about it and speak more about what was going on. But I'll go ahead and end it right here. And I'll say, to anyone who may be watching, just go ahead and like and subscribe the video, and and uh, and then I'll just say God bless anyone who may be watching this, and I pray that we all bless Jesus Christ, and may Jesus Christ bless all of us. Amen.